Do you want your business to grow? Do you want the access to global network? Gain the business and investment opportunities? Build lasting business friendships and strategic partnerships? Become a member of CEO Club's network and prepare your business for an amazing change. CEO Club's network is the most effective business platform for CEOs and decision makers to share experiences, explore opportunities, and grow business connections locally and internationally. What do we do for our members? We organize monthly business events with a strong focus on networking. Get exposures and recognitions as we serve members with a wide range of benefits. Members can take part in industry-specific panel discussions, roundtables, lunch meetings, breakfast meetings, awards nights, gala dinners, and other informal gatherings, like cigar nights or high teas. Through our unique CEO Club's mobile app, we help our members to connect with powerful business figures, community leaders, and government officials in selected countries worldwide. So, if you are looking for a multicultural atmosphere, strong networking platform, and millions of B2B connections, CEO Club's network is the right place for you. Powerful global brand and network for decades. More than 50 awards received globally. The knowledge with experience makes the difference. Join CEO Clubs and be part of the whole new world of prestige and pride. Give us a call or visit our website and get connected with a unique world of business opportunities.
Welcome to CEO Club webinar. Today's webinar is about member initiative and knowledge sharing. We will conduct 3 sessions in where our experts will introduce the blueprint for the new transforming health insurance through automation and digital learning maturity in multiple ways that it will help us in the current situation. As you all know, CEO Club is one of the largest business organizations, always staying close to our CEOs, and would like to share guidance and best practices to help each of you driving your business through this coronavirus and prepare for the post-COVID era. As in today's webinar, we will have 3 sessions with experts who will be sharing their insight about. Let me briefly talk on the first topic. Would be a blueprint for the new exceptional. And this will be done, presentation by Mr. Lyndon De Silva, who is a General Manager, Middle East and Africa for Concentrix, who will guide us through a framework through the 3 major challenges that we face today. It's like increased revenue, cost optimization, deliver exceptional customer experience with balancing the first. Second session would be transforming health insurance through automization and shifting from the traditional offerings, and this would be done by Mr. Aftab Hasan, who is the Secretary General of Insurance Business Group and the CEO of Arya Insurance Brokerage Bezad, will speak about the breakthrough technologies spearheading the insurance landscape with the advancement of digitization and automation in this health insurance sector. And I think in all this is what is happening in currently is all about health. So I think it would be very interesting to see how the insurance industry is focused. The third presentation would be on a topic of digital learning maturity, would be done by Mr. Muhammad Shabir, the regional business partner of Excedia Management Consultancy. Will guide is one how organizations are transforming themselves from traditional learning methods to digital learning approaches in a cost-effective, sustainable, and scalable manner with less logistically challenges. A method to know and adopt by small and big organizations alike, with insights on the conversation physically to virtual learning through multiple ways, animating storylines, AR, virtual reality, and perform. So there is, I think, all these 3 presentations are very focused industry. Since we have 3 presenters, so I will start with the first topic, which I mentioned, would be the blueprint for the new exceptional by Mr. Lyndon De Silva. But let me talk briefly about Mr. Lyndon. He's the general manager in Middle East and Africa at Concentrix, a global business service company delivering extraordinary customer employees and user experience for more than 750 of the world's best brands. He has spent last 30 years with companies like Xerox, Standard Chartered Bank, Morgan Stanley, Tata, AIG, IBM. He's deeply passionate about the use of technology, and his areas of expertise are financial services, high value outsourcing, customer experience, and digital. So I think we are very looking forward to hear Mr. Linden. So I hand over to Mr. Linden. But before I do that, I will recommend all the participants. We will have a Q&A session after all these presentations. So please do drop your question in a chat box. We like to hear as many questions, and we will ask all these three experts present today to answer your questions. And we want to have a very interactive session today. So I strongly recommend questions. And so now I would recommend other presenters to please mute their audio and video, and only Mr. Linden I'll hand over to you now, please. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Dr. Tariq, thank you. My dear audience, it's good to connect. Going back to the objective, really, for our session today. Wonderful. Cost reduction, revenue generation, customer experience. I think our calendar is never going to be the same again. Okay, BC no longer stands for before Christ. And I think if you look at the next slide, what you will see is these are things that we've been speaking about for a long time. Nothing new, except for, of course, the logo bang in the middle, which is the Expo 2020. That, of course, will not be the same again. But really, I wanted to give you a glimpse of this is what the past looked like. What might the future look like? And more importantly, what do we do about this? So next slide, please, Shanapat, if you don't mind. We all know this. 10 years of innovation happened very, very rapidly. And moving on, what you will find that if I have to pick up 2 or 3 of the most important changes that we've seen, so we look at our global portfolio of our 750 clients, I think the ones that really stand out is the one on the extreme left. Hyper-personalization. When people have a near-death experience, I think it tends to amplify their expectations and it tends to amplify their needs. And what this means is the way you serve your current customer will need to change in a manner that almost each one of them will expect you to treat them like they are the only customer. That's number one. Number two, there's going to be an enormous shift away from voice. Everybody says talk is cheap. The reality is talk is not cheap. Talk is expensive. And we're seeing this massive shift away. It already began before, but the acceleration of shift to messaging, to chat, to social, virtual, augmented, different modes of really communicating. That's the second one. And the third one is what we would call the contactless syndrome. And this is COVID-driven, of course, but what this really means is in the new environment, how do you redesign your customer journey to take into account that people really are going to be paranoid about touching things? The way they will interact will be dramatically different, whether it's in a retail store or whether this is online. Their whole journey is going to change. So how do you redesign your entire experience to be exceptional? So moving on. This out here is a simple framework that we've used with most of our clients. And the way this is designed, just so that you know how to use this, there's a whole bunch of stuff in there. And not all of this might apply to every single organization. But the way you use this framework is you pick a few that are relevant, you map that onto where you are currently in your maturity cycle, and then you build a very, very precise execution plan. So let me spend time going over each one of them. So the first one, I think moving on, Jennifer, the entire workforce strategy needs to change dramatically. And we saw some really interesting examples. So for one of our technology clients, when everything was locked down, the gig economy, the Solve platform that we currently have, turned out to be really, the savior. They could very, very rapidly migrate tickets that needed to be executed and got people who were available on this gig platform in remote locations to really execute. So I think the way you need to think about this is not one model is going to work. You're going to have an integration of gig. You will need to do, of course, some, onshore, offshore, nearshore, whatever model you choose from a brick and mortar, and then work at home, but not work at home the way we've known it in the last 3 months. This is not, a corporate VPN, right? This is what we would call enterprise-grade work at home. And let me spend a minute on that. So moving on, Shanabha. The way for you to think about enterprise-grade work at home is a replication of everything you would do in your brick and mortar workplace, whether this is performance management, whether this is training, whether this is huddles with your teams, whether this is any single activity that you really did in a brick and mortar, is to have this in a digital footprint. And just in terms of impact, we've seen two significant call-outs. Number one, it actually reduces cost by almost 15 to 20%. The second is the flexibility it gives in terms of addressing peaks and troughs that we see in all our businesses. I think that's the other huge advantage that you should clearly, take advantage of. So going back, if there's one thing that you need to do is make your business pandemic proof, you need to come out with a workforce model that will be resilient, but more importantly, scalable, because in our lifetime, probably we will see a pandemic again. So how do you prepare for that? Moving on. The next one is, what does your digital experience look like? And how do you address it? More importantly, how do you address it to generate revenue? So moving on. So this was a model that, and I'll give you an example that you see at the side of you. Think of this as a person generating almost $1 million dirhams a month for one of the leading banks in the region, all right? But this doesn't happen in isolation. The question is, what does your new journey map look like? What does that digital footprint look like for your existing clients? Do you have a digital marketing strategy? Then how do you layer that with the analytics? Then how do you hyper-personalize so that it's an offer that is unique to the person or the customer you're reaching out to? And then finally, how do you combine your different strategies for acquisition? How do you use cross-sell, upsell, next best action, which is the integration of analytics and some of the other technologies that we see? But really, how do you build a revenue model that no longer is dependent on merely, face-to-face or even digital in the earlier context? So that's, I would say the second thing that you need to do. The third thing, moving on. I spoke about this when we started. I spoke about messaging. We're seeing an enormous adoption in the last couple of months. The trend already existed. The question is, do you have a messaging platform that integrates all channels of messaging, whether it's SMS, whether it's WhatsApp, whether it's traditional chat, no matter what the medium? The reality is your clients are using all of these, and it's crucial for your entire life cycle with the client, from acquisition to pre-sales to purchasing to delivery to technical support in the end, that you really have a strategy that allows you to use a platform that addresses messaging as an option. The other benefits naturally of messaging is you have the option for concurrent chats. What this really means is, rather than a one-to-one interaction, you really can have multiple interactions at the same time. So that reduces cost dramatically. Moving on. Just to give you a recap. So these are pretty evident, but if there's one I had to pick up, I would pick up that moving to a cloud-based model for any service that is non-core, that supports your business, might be probably the most important thing that you can do for yourself today, which is shift to a scalable, more agile, cloud platform that really can help you scale up and prepare for the next pandemic. Hopefully not. Moving on. Finally, this is where we find clients miss out the most. You can move to the next slide, Shunabha, which is the ability to truly listen. So how do you build a solution that not only allows you to listen, but to really analyze, to empower, and to finally act? So what does this mean? Think of ourselves. When we call our telecom providers, how many of us really press, one saying we would love to have a survey? The reality is most people don't. So the question really is, how do you design that communication with your clients that allow you to get back feedback from multiple sources, whether it's email, whether it's SMS, whether it's a voice call, whether it's a social channel. How do you do that, number one? Number two, how do you take all of the information, run the analytics on top of it, and distill that information into a set of actions that you can then feed either to your teams that execute on the ground, or then more importantly, feedback into your entire product cycle and product redesign. Okay. And then finally, I think the big question is, how do you really take, moving on, how do you take all of this information? How do you combine the voice of the customer? How do you combine the analytics? How do you combine the digital interface? How do you combine all of those and really address the one aspect which I think most leaders miss out? So there are four stakeholders. There is a customer, there is a shareholder, there's the employee, and then there's society. I think as leaders, the fourth thing that all of us will need to focus on is how do our new offerings, how do our new solutions really touch lives? So this is a real example. The National Relay Service is really an offering by the Australian government. And what this does is provide people who are differently able, right, whether it's speech or whether it's hearing impaired, to really interact with people they love or to interact for their business needs. So really a solution that touches all aspects of their life. So what we did is we looked at this first, of course, is intense conversations with really people who needed the service. The second is, how do you redesign the front end? How do you use digital? How do you use UI and UX? How do you redesign that front end interface that creates an incredible user experience that makes it simple for them? The second is, how do you then layer that on top of the technology with the human element? How do you bring in people that can actually do that relaying, which is people who know sign language? And then how do you stitch all of that into one seamless solution so that people who are differently able can really perform and live their lives to the fullest? I think the thing for us to think about is, as you look at these four aspects, is it does not take $1 billion to be $1 billion company in terms of your digital footprint or your digital experience. I think just to give you a sense, voice of customer could be in the range of between 10 to 20,000 dirhams really to start up. And then the cost per transaction is maybe 3 to 5 dirhams. And similarly, like these, most of the solutions that are available, this is not a concentric statement, right? This is in general. Solutions that are available really at different price points. And I think what is critical for all the leaders who are on this call today and beyond is to, once again, if you go back to the blueprint, is look at what your current business model looks like, and then pick out those services or those solutions that are most relevant, and then hopefully, stitch them all together for something that is an exceptional user and an employee experience. Thank you, Dr. Tariq. I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Linden. Interesting to know that how things are moving on, and I think there might be some questions in the Q&A session to ask more about that, how you think that the future looks like in the current situation. So now I'd like to go to our second presentation. That would be the transforming health insurance through automation and paradigm shift from the traditional offerings. It will be done by Mr. Aftab Hasan. Let me share briefly about Mr. Aftab Hasan. He's the Secretary General of Insurance Business Group and the CEO of Arya Insurance Brokerage Company, Besat. Mr. Aftab is a professional entrepreneur with a resounding stake in energy, offshore, marine, oil and gas, IT, and insurance, and reinsurance sector. He has approximately 30-year professional experience serving and leading top management team with leading companies from India and Middle East. He's an elected representative committee member and the Secretary General on the board of Insurance Business Group. under the auspices of Dubai Chamber of Commerce and Industries, while serving on the board of various business groups and social networking organizations. So I hand over to Mr. Aftab for his presentation. I request the other speakers to please mute their audio and video again. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Again, as I said, like the nomenclature of BC was nicely given by Lyndon. So I'm just going to put it the overview. If we talk about like COVID-19, as you know, that the pandemic has shattered the entire economies of the world and has also influenced almost all business sectors, including insurance, of course. So the year 2020, which was waited for so long by many business entities and countries to be marked illustrious and eminent, and was supposedly be celebrated as the historical year, just by the significance of its compounding double-digit number, will now be written as the year of distress, suffering, fear, uncertainty, recessions, and rather depression if this pandemic prolongs for some more time. So it will go down in history as one of the years of our lives where we seem to witness our worlds being turned upside down. Although at this juncture, it has visibly augmented the importance of the insurance industry's positions, especially exhibiting the role as a mitigator of economic damage to industries at large, paying a heavy price to reinsurers in the end. And the escalating, privation which has caused by this pandemic on individuals and businesses and economies has further stressed the importance of a sound, stable, and developed insurance market and the role it plays during such calamity. This pandemic has severely impacted many industries such as the travel, transportation, manufacturing, retail, hospitality. And as I said, the insurance industry's role shouldn't be seen as just as a mitigator of economic damage to business across industry, but we should mind it that insurance cannot be the only way out for tackling the impediments faced by insurance by these businesses that are afflicted by COVID-19 crisis. So let's come to the topic of my presentation. As you see that the transformation or the transformation in the health insurance sector, which has rapidly changed from the traditional offering. And that's what the word automization or automation rather. So these technologies are, are enabling the creation of new insurance product and business services beyond. Jaibat, can you just turn it because I don't see the next slide. Can you help me? The same thing was with I don't know where. Can you turn the page? Yeah, so kind of you. So that's the disclaimer. Can you just further go on the third slide? Very good, very good. That's it. So as I said, if you see this variety of innovative technologies which are set to spur a basic transformation of the insurance industry. So these emerging technology provides opportunities for traditional insurers to modernize and reinvent themselves. It also forces them to respond to new sources of competition from increasingly well-funded and lively software-based companies that are beginning to make inroads in the insurance market by focusing on unfulfilled end user demand, bringing down cost and providing new services. So this is we have been witnessing. And one of the most exciting implications resulted from these development, which you can see there, is expanded insurability for low-income population, which is obviously a good news for many of the impoverished nation who were deprived from availing basic health insurance and other related services from insurance field. So again, I will ask your help on the landscape. If we talk about, it's okay. On the landscape, if we talk about, this is the landscape of the insurance industry, as you see, which is in between the regulators. And here it is in Dubai, DHA, and Abu Dhabi, it is HAD, and Health Authority of Abu Dhabi, and the whole circle of which is the landscape engaging with each other across the value chain. So this, if you will find out like mutually conflicting goals there are always with these. Like for instance, if we talk about, to start with, the role of a TPA is very important, who are the policy administrator, and they run your policy, your insurance policy, whatever insurance policy you are having, they are the one who run the policy. And then based on the local insurance companies, the policy, which you buy a product, this is again distributed, the risk is distributed to the reinsurers, which are, of course, the reinsurers are bigger in capacity, so they can absorb bigger risks. So if we talk about, then again, there are different distribution channels where you buy insurance or you purchase insurance with them, including the insurance brokers or intermediary. But then the role of the insurance intermediary minded is just not selling the product, which is off the shelf available. They are the one who are your consultant, your advisor, suggesting you, because everybody has their own need and all size doesn't fit all. So Janabat, can you just change again, another slide, please? Okay. So as we said, like why we need medical insurance, you know that it's secure your futures, protection against medical crisis, and you can have a planning for emergencies. You will have a better treatment, health benefits. You will have also referral benefits if you want to go to abroad from your current network. Can you just move it to another slide, gentlemen? Okay, let me talk a little bit on this innovation in insurance. So one of the innovation is InsurTech. And we have been witnessing technological advancement in the field of insurance, especially with the advent of InsurTech. And the era of relative stability has ended with the increasing deployment of advanced digitalization, or as I said, automization. There has been like analytics, you have sensor technologies, there are digital insurance platforms, you have meticulous medicines, innovation in insurance, cognitive computers, which has also come, and related services. So this is what we have been witnessing, that InsurTech has penetrated the industry in a major way. And this is helping, in fact, to the policyholders at large, plus the risk taker, which is insurance companies. Can you change the slide, gentlemen? Okay. So now insurance landscape. So this is the jumbo and bumbo of different, I can get it from the different websites where people, they are selling the insurance, or you can buy insurance from this. So this is the insurance landscape where insurance is being disrupted like other major industries, which is grappling with the risk and opportunities of new technologies, and hopefully all for good. Technology is changing the nature of the risk and is enabling new products, services, and channels to invade and penetrate the growing insurance landscape. So can you just move the slide? Now, look at this, Lloyd's of London conventional underwriting room. This is when they started from a coffee shop in black and white, that photo, and this is the current Lloyd's underwriting room. Now, we can see, I was just, last October, I was there in London to visit the Lloyd's, and then I was like, afraid and amazed to see the people that the era of conventional underwriting insurance is fading gradually with the advent of this all digitalization and automization, which is well underway in the insurance sector, while like mobile application solutions and various development tools are also helping customers to get ahead of competitors. And then there is the impact which we saw on the digitalization of insurance. So Jennifer, can you just move it? Very good. So this is the future of underwriting, as illustrated here, that the underwriters, or you are physically talking with a robot. So this is the era, whereas a robot has taken over your underwriting space as well. Whereas you normally the underwriters used to rely on actuarial science. which has been taken over again with artificial intelligence and use the data compilations, and based on the data compilation, they can work a better job than physical. Can you just move again? Okay. Now, coming to the impact of digitalization on health insurance that we were talking about. So we can see that now that the wearable technologies in the health and life insurance is being transformed as biometric sensors such as Fitbits and Misfit provide insurance firms with unprecedented data on the health of their clients. It means the insurers are already leveraging wearable biometric sensors to incentivize policyholder to adapt healthy habit. It means if you are using these Fitbits, and then if you go to the insurance company for your health insurance, probably you will have a better chances of getting a better rate terms because you are health conscious. Can you just move it again? Okay. Now, as we say, like, even the cognitive computing framework is helping a lot to the industry. And this can help doctors diagnose illness by examining like mountains of patient data, including their entire medical history or notes from previous exams, medical images, and risk factors such as age, or you can say genetic makeup, and or any pre-existing conditions to determine a short list of potential diagnosis. So this is all can be done by cognitive computing framework. So this has also again impacted. Now coming on the development of mobile health apps. So on the mobile health apps is very important in the transformation of towards digitalization of the insurance sector. I have just, for illustration, I've used, the first one is our own Baizat, which you can compare, buy and use your health insurance. The second is also of the RAC insurance, and third one from others. So what I said is that it is very important the transformation that mobile health app now towards digitization of the insurance sector. This can be used in conjunction with solutions specific to the insurance industry to improve patient care, update processes, and help insurers maximize revenues while creating an optimal customer experience. And this mobile health tools are also stimulating digital transformation in the insurance market. Insurance companies have an opportunity to leverage mobile tools to engage patients from effectively than they could in the past. And the potential gains here are substantial. Patient can get easier access to better health data, take control of their personal well-being in new ways, and document their wellness strategies with insurance company. In turn, insurers can integrate client data into internal mobile apps and services to give the brokers or other workers an opportunity to provide more nuanced, efficient customer experience. Normally, insurers hold the key to healthcare's digital future because of the data is with them, which is very important. So as we say that health insurance have a multi-billion-dollar opportunity to lead a digital transformation of healthcare that mean lower cost and better care of patient. And then now, can you change it? So what we are gaining from this innovation in health insurance, as you can see that artificial intelligence again is beginning to make a difference in healthcare. If I quote like a report by IBM, which played a crucial role, AI, in an industry that is expected, they say, to see medical data double every 73 days during this corona in 2020. And another survey, which was conducted by Frost and Sullivan, whereas artificial market for healthcare application is going to reach over more than $6 billion by 2021 we are talking about. So from $634 million, which was 6 years back, we are talking about $6 billion. So this technology has the potential to improve the outcome by 30 to 40% while cutting treatment cost by as much as 50%. And insurers are also using IA to answer the queries of potential customers in real time when you call the call center, and to increase sales conversion rate their own also. Jennifer, can you move it? Now, blockchain is another area in the health insurance industry, which is widely used now and has rapidly penetrated into the insurance industry, which has affecting the efficiency and business model of insurers in terms of risk control, operations, or you talk about even in the reinsurance business. And despite the rise of insurance intermediaries, many consumers still buy insurance by calling insurance broker traditionally, and that will happen. Human supervision, as we said, or information loss, content, or misunderstanding, and other problems are possible to result in a waste of resources normally, which happens. So the introduction of blockchain is a mode of encrypting and protecting the stored sharing data, bringing huge opportunities for insurance company and emerging technologies company. Can you change the slide? Okay. Now, so the benefit of automation to health insurance companies. So as you see that it will have faster actions and decisions for fraud detections. It will have better outcome for portfolio optimization. It will also lower the cost for reducing labor costs with automated telephone customer service. And it will also greater scale for performing large scale tasks. And then product and service innovation also, it helps in new features to create entirely new product. And also the client data production, which leaks from manual data handling, there's a chances it will prevent. And also it will help on the compliance side to automate the regulatory activities. So this is what I said, like, something which I should conclude that this emerging technologies and innovation, as I was telling you, are beginning to transform the health insurance landscape. And this has produced enormous segment to modernize and create new products and services. And it has also led to the emergence of many new innovative startups seeking to significantly enhance the way health insurance has traditionally been assembled, purchased, and experienced. Today, customers have a number of ways they can buy health insurance. And the market is a quite different place to where it was some years ago, which involves, just to give you, like, from our side, we saw the transformation of this particular industry in a different way, whereas we have been joined by 30,000, we are working with like 30,000, we are handling the lives from our own Bayzat, which is, you can visit the app. Now, Jennifer, can you just run that 1 minute video so that they understand our offerings and the same. So that was our little presentation on Bayzat. And then to conclude my thought, I must say, to get the most of our people during this crisis, we must take care of our people, secure health, build a mindset to handle fear, and deploy with accountability, reflect changes of new business model, and control the controllable, and avoid overestimating, calibrate our internal resources, and adjust operation to new business model to secure business continuity. Thank you for listening to me and giving a patient hearing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Aftab. I think what we are facing in the last 3 months is all about health. And I think the insurance business is definitely a major part of the healthcare industry. So I think I'm sure there'll be a lot of revolutions will be coming into your industry in insurance, how to cover this COVID or how to protect the families and individuals and corporations in coming years. I think there's a big task for the insurance industry to go back and make a better fine print, and for the future. So we all are covered in safe hands with one of these insurance companies,
Sure.
Yeah, but thank you very much, Mr. Aftab. Now I will go to the third session, the last session. The topic is digital learning maturity, and our presenter and the speaker is Mr. Muhammad Shabir, who manages the professional business of Exladia in UAE and consulting at digital innovation, a company with branches in Malaysia, Qatar, India, and UK. He started off his career at a young age handling the family retail business while pursuing his studies. Move on to work as an HR and marketing expert in different levels with the multinational companies like ENY, American Express, Aditya Birla Group, Gargash Insurance, Bangalore, Doha, and Dubai. He has set up ventures in agriculture, farming, human development, consulting, and logistics sector. Father of 3, enjoys writing, reading, learning horse riding and leisure timing. So I'm sure you're doing a lot of reading and writing, but I'm not sure you're doing horse riding in the last 3 months, So, thank you very much. So I hand over to Mr. Shabir, if you can turn your audio and video on, and I will request the other presenters to please turn their video and audio off. So here to Mr. Shabir.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tariq, for that generous introduction. And thank you so much for the fellow speakers for amazing insights. I think you've given us great insights into where we should focus as a digital transformation company in terms of the opportunities in your industries in healthcare and insurance, basically. Thanks a lot for those insights. And thank you so much for all the participants for coming and joining in to this session. And to start off with the session, I must apologize. I've got some issues with the camera. It's going on and off in between. Anyways, regardless, I hope that you're able to hear me. My picture is not that what is important, but what I'm saying probably might be more important. So I hope I'm audible to all of you. And to start off the session, the topic for today's session, as you've all seen, is digital learning maturity. And when we hear of this topic, many a times we think this is actually not something for myself. This is for the big organization. This is for the big guys. This is for the big league. There's nothing that I have to do with it. I'd like to start with a small story that I had endured in my own life. Like, I grew up in a very, very small village in the southern part of India. And when I was, I think, the age of 13 or 12, studying in the 6th standard, I had an opportunity to travel on one of the longest journeys of my life back then, to go to the neighboring city of Bangalore to attend a wedding function. And what happened was, on the way back, I was actually left with a group of rich kids in a bus, in an overnight journey. and they were actually only speaking English, which I understood nothing of. I did not understand a word of what they were speaking. And the poor kid next to me, the boy was actually repeatedly trying to ask me something, but I was not able to grab or understand what he was actually trying to communicate to me. And after a few failed attempts, he got fed up, and I heard him saying to the next child, on the other side, "This guy is a monkey." Yeah, well, I did not understand that fully. All that I grabbed was monkey, the word monkey. The reason I'm telling you this story is this word monkey, although it was negative in the way it was actually said, but it had a tremendous impact in my life, in the way that I looked at learning ever since then. And everything basically from then that I was actually trying to approach was from a different perspective. We will actually come back to the story a little later. When we come back to the topic now, there are two elements of the topic that we are actually looking at when we speak of the digital learning maturity. There is basically the learning maturity, and there is the digital maturity of the organizations or of the individuals. Now, similar to the story that I have told you, all of you would have had experiences and learnings in your life with positive or negative, effects in your lives. So I think if you look at the attendees or the participants, most of us, if not all of us, I think would be above the age of 35, if I'm not wrong, right? I cannot see you nodding, but I assume that you're nodding, right? So let's say if you actually look back at your life, if you look back at your life for the last 35 years or 40 years or 50 years, regardless of your age, depending upon your age, if you look at your life, look at all the key happenings in your life, all the learning points that you've actually gone through in your lives, right? And if you try to quantify, if I tell you, Mr. Tariq or Mr. Aftab or anyone for that matter who's listening to me now, have you tried quantifying your life experiences into a storyline? How many of you, of the attendees, would be actually able to create a story of your life experiences that you have gone through in your life? And if you have to actually, let's say, pass it on to a group of children to impart the knowledge, or even to actually share the information to your next generations, or if you have to actually impart this knowledge to your friends or colleagues or family members or anyone, probably 70 or 80% of us wouldn't have actually captured that journey that could be imparted in a very systematic or an easy to share manner. Even the 10 to 20% who can actually do that, if you think of your life journey of the last 35 or 40 or 50 years, if you actually summarize your life learnings, that probably might last for 30 minutes or an hour and a half. That's it, right? And if you were actually trying to share this information of your entire life learning to your colleagues, friends, or your family members, let's say you need to have the physical freedom of that 1 hour or 1.5 hours to narrate this story to them. You need to be physically available there to be able to narrate the story to them, right? Which means that each time you want to narrate this story to a group, you both need to be having the availability and the freedom of the time to be able to listen and share, right? So this is what I call the first level of the topic today. This is what is the learning maturity of your own individual lives, basically. How good you are in terms of quantifying or summarizing your life experiences into a storyline that can be shared or imparted, physically with whoever the audience is, basically, right? Now, there's always limitations to this. There's always physical limitations. If you have to do this once, twice, thrice, it's okay. But if you have to do it hundreds or thousands of times, it's impossible for you as an individual to do that. And even it's impossible for you to leave this as a legacy for the rest of the generations to come in, right? So what you can do is, if you look at the next step of the topic, the digital learning, the digital maturity, basically, what if you could convert or give life to your storyline through animated characters, which can actually, make your story active. And if the storyline was about 1 hour of talks, you can probably even summarize that to a 5 or 10 minutes as a digital story. You can probably have your own animated character inside, and you can build other interesting animated character inside, and you can actually convert your own story to a digital platform. It can be an animated content, it can be a virtual reality content. It's regardless of the platform. Basically, you can actually make that story live forever and ever. And you can basically also communicate this storyline to thousands of people at the same time. You don't have to be physically there. And you can be even sure of the learning impact from that story, because you know exactly who is looking at what part of the story. And all the insights that you want to know from that would be available for you at a click of a button. So this is what, simply put, your digital learning maturity is for your own life. How would you summarize the life learnings into a storyline, and how would you digitize that to make sure that you're actually saving on a lot of logistical challenges, and you're saving on a lot of administration challenges. You're actually saving a lot of money. You're changing a lot of your efforts, because you're not physically there to repeat all these things to every audience that you're actually imparting the information to. So this way, the story lives on, even as a legacy, even after you're long gone. I don't intend to say that may Allah give you all long life, but it actually retains the story, and it actually captures the information in a much better way and in a much more easy to handle methodology, basically. So we will actually look at this in a detailed perspective in an organizational point of view, but I actually wanted to change this mindset of people. No, this topic is not for me, this is for big organizations. We've managed to change that mindset during this 10 or 15 minutes presentation. I think we have achieved our objectives for the day. Anyways, I did not talk much about myself or the company that I represent. So I thought I'll just slide back in a few slides. My apologies, I am a bit disorganized in my presentations. I don't really follow the structure, but I think everyone has a way of doing it. But if you look at it, we, as an organization, we are into people, process, and technology. So each of us, each of these domains have its own offerings that we offer to organizations. But what makes us sort of different, especially during the pandemic times, is it's not the products that the organizations are looking at anymore. You might have the best products in the world, but does it solve a problem that they are facing at the moment? Can you actually combine your digitization technologies, your digital offerings, your process reengineering offerings, your technology offerings? Can you all combine? Can you combine all of them into a solution and provide it as a end solution for the client that actually saves him money and time, and and helps him to cut down on his resources and to optimize the resources, and probably allow him to use the resources that he has in the best possible way? I think that's what we need to look at in the way ahead. So we do have a good bunch of technology offerings. I can share this presentation with you later on if anyone wishes to have this, but we have to move ahead. So this is me. Mr. Tariq has already given a good introduction to myself, so I'm not spending any more time on that. This is my story. I mean, with respect to the topic that I'm speaking, this is basically a storyline, or probably the key learning indicators, or the key learning experiences I have had in my life. Now, I don't have the time or the freedom to speak about all these instances, although probably you can recognize by now the monkey part, right? But the rest of the things would take its own time for me to actually narrate to you. Probably at a later time we can catch up over a coffee, and I'm even more interested to listen to your stories rather than narrating mine. So when we talk about as we said, there are two elements to the digital learning maturity. the reason I gave you that example to start with, in our industry, if you know, like if you're talking about learning and development or the training industry, there are two different ways of approaching a topic or presenting on a topic. Either we make the topic too complicated that nobody understands anything, so people do not speak about it, everybody is confused about it. And the other one is basically simplify a topic to such an extent that you feel that there was no learning, specific. There was no pressure of learning. It was an automatic process and an easy discussion. So I would choose to have the second approach. That's exactly why I started with the story, and we would come back to it again in the later part of the things, basically. So as we said, there were two elements in your personal digital learning maturity. The same two steps are there in terms of however large an organization is in terms of the digital learning maturity. But for you as an individual, probably you can capture your life learnings manually. You can probably write it down. You can write it in a diary or anything like that. But for an organization with a multiple number of users and thousands of people working in the company, it's very difficult for them to capture this information manually. For them, they might actually as well need to capture this information through a number of platforms, whether it is the learning management systems or the ERP systems or the performance management systems and all the systems they have, and through the automation of the processes they have inside the company. So the more data that you have, the more stories you can actually build from the data. But the data itself, there are so many organizations that has got amazing information captured. There are so many data sets available, but at the end of the day, that's your digital maturity. How many of your processes are automated? How many of the things that you're doing are captured? Everything is there. But at the end of it, do you have the wisdom, or do you put the efforts basically to understand the story behind this data? Are you able to, actually, whether it is a top-down approach that you have in terms of capturing your skill gap analysis based on your strategic objectives, or a bottom-up approach, anything for that matter, are you able to capture the storyline from the data sets that you have? That's what actually makes you different. I mean, if you actually see the learning curves, if you, based on the learning culture in the organization, are you able to package it in the right way and present it in a scalable manner? Scalability is the issue. I mean, if you are able to present a learning solution that's only presentable to a group of people, then again, the next group of people come in, you might need to start over again. So that's what we are trying to address with the digital learning maturity of organizations and the approach that we have within the organizations. I want you all to actually do this exercise quickly for yourselves, for your life first, and when you have time later on, you can do this for your organizations, right? So I've actually put these two elements in this X and Y axis. So look at yourself and see for yourself, where is it that you stand in terms of your own lives learning and digital learning maturity? Are you at the level 1 as a fresher, or are you a sophomore, or are you a junior, or are you at a senior level? Yeah, if you're already doing everything what I've explained and you're at a senior level in terms of digital learning maturity, very good, well done. But what it takes to remain at the top, it's more difficult than what it takes to reach at the top. Sustainability in that case is the most important thing. But if you're at the lesser level also, like if you're at level 1 or level 2, regardless, we always have the time and the learnings basically to move ahead quickly, right? So you can do that as an exercise for your organization also later on, and reflect upon it. Basically, how is it that you can do that for organizations? When you come into the details of the digital learning methodologies, there are a number of ways that you can, present your storyline, whatever that learnings that you want to impart into your target audience, in a number of ways. I've classified them into 4 ways here. So basically, it can be done through gamification, gamified content. You can do it through animated storylines. You can actually do it through virtual reality, and you can do it through augmented realities. we have done projects on all these things. I don't think we would have the time and freedom to share the examples of it, but I can always share with you the links, and you can watch the videos of the same. And as we say, or as they say, the learning never stops. It's from cradle to grave. It's from hiring to retiring. You continuously have to, work on it. And there are a number of case studies that I can show you. If you actually move, especially during these pandemic times, where I personally, I have colleagues that I have never met who work with us in Egypt and in Tunisia and places like that. I've never met them. Maybe I will never meet them also, but we have to work on projects together. We might have to need to have skill gaps filled in the same manner. But how do we then engage with each other? With a virtual reality platform, yes, we can be in the same training room with a trainer sitting in the UK and the participant sitting in one part of the world, in Europe, one sitting in US, or whichever part of the world it is. And it doesn't, even in terms of cost and in terms of time, I can give you a quick slider, basically, that will show you how much it would save in terms of your investments, right? Just going ahead, see, even if you look at your own storyline or your company's storyline, basically, there is an approach that we take in converting basically like a normal training or a normal learning that you want to impart through a journey. Basically, we start by actually identifying the objectives. Why do you want to narrate the story? What is the objective behind it? If you don't capture the first step, all the rest of the 6 steps is a waste of time. Right? So basically, we look at what is the objective that you're trying to achieve, based on which we look at all the kind of inputs that you have currently across all the platform that you have. Maybe it is written down in a paper, maybe it is available in an Excel sheet, maybe it is available in your ERP platforms, maybe it is available in the form of PDF, boring PDF documents, wherever it is. So we capture all this information and we actually create a story out of it. This is the most important part. The conceptualization of a thing is the most important part. Once the storyline is created, like, for example, we were working with one of our banking clients. Now they have this boring, most of the banks would have to train people on the product lines. And every individual who joins them would have to go for 5 or 10 days of back-to-back continuous trainings, and it's a boring process for the participants. So what we have done is basically we created an Emirati family with expats with different characters, as a blind grandmother, and with names with veiled women, and expat workers, and a minor son, and a working partner, and a working wife. So basically all these things with names and characters built into the story. What we have done is we actually convert this boring PDF documents into a conversation. It just feels like, even if you're just going through the physical material, it feels like you're reading a story. Then the next step is you convert that into an animated content, so the reading time even actually is reduced to 1 in 10 times, basically. So it's like once that design phase is completed, you review and send it for the review of the client, you approve it, then we go live, we launch the program. But launching the program doesn't ensure any success as well. So we need to actually create a sense of competition among the people who actually go through these learning programs, through World Cups or championships or competitions, and engage the audience, because there are different types of learners that you have in your organization. That's the most important thing that you have to understand. Where you as an individual, you have a reason why you learn. Some people learn to learn, some people learn to earn, some people learn to stand out. There are different reasons why we learn. So basically, depending on that, we try to capture those learning styles, and we actually try to create a competition. Some people actually learn to win, if not learn to learn. Right? At the end of it, we actually quantify the comparison of physical and the digitized version of learnings, and we see how much basically the organization have saved. This is just like for a quick comparison of how like a workflow could be converted into a storyline, and like in a conversation through characters. You can see that for yourself. I'm not going to spend much time on this. And these are different levels in terms of the content creation. So you can, depending on if you want a basic digitized platform in an animated content, you can have a level 1 content, which is basically a voiceover with very less interactions. Level 2 would be much more interactive, but level 3 would be much more, it would be very, very interactive with gamified content and things like that, that would really, reduce the amount of time required and increase the impact of the learning. Some of the samples, I will share with you some of the samples in the chat box later on, and these were actually examples of the animated learning contents. We've created a number of programs. Just to give you an example, the Certified Econometrics Consultant Program, it's actually a 2 days, it's one of our signature certification programs that we offer around the world, and on psychometrics. So this used to take us like 3 days of physical training to do that. Now we have converted this into online modules. It takes just 45 minutes for you to, basically go through one session of the certification program. So all put together, you're talking about 2 hours of content, which is reduced from 3 days. This is what I'm talking about in terms of saving of time and efforts and logistical efforts. AR, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with the augmented reality concepts. It is used basically if you want to enhance, let's say, for example, if you go to a museum now, if you just scan on a marker, the artifact that you have would be explained in a virtual description through your mobile or your tablet, basically. So it's enhancing an object to be something else. That's a simple definition of an augmented reality. Yeah. So this is, let's say, the virtual reality. This is another way of one of the most used methodologies these days of creating digital content, basically. And this is some of the samples that we worked on. If you look at, let's say, just for an example, if I have to explain the impact of this, if you were to do this training physically, let's say you see this pump, the third picture, here, which is written bearing on it. So if you look at this, basically, if you want to assemble, or if this is a main machinery and you want to train people on it, it's very difficult for you to assemble and disassemble the actual equipment multiple times. You cannot do that. Even if you do that second time, the person who has disassembled it might not be able to assemble it back. This is what happens in real life, and maybe only one person can go through this at a time. But if you have actually created this in a virtual environment, you can break it, you can throw the parts away, you can bring this together, you can assemble it, and you can share this experience with 1,000 people at the same time. They can all do this together. So imagine the kind of impact that you can have. And similar like that, you can cut down literally any environment, like a physical environment, can completely be actually shot in a 360-degree video format, and the same environment can be created in a virtual platform with all your imagination. If you want your learnings to happen in space or in the moon or in the Mars, you can do any of those things. Your imagination is the limit in terms of virtual reality. And then we talk about gamification, then just pushing a sense of competition among participants and trying to bring down the impact of learning. Especially if you have a young crowd, you need to have a sense of competition. Through different. We've got superhero gamifications and things like that. The more you learn, the more powers you unleash, and people are interested to be more and more stronger in the game, and they try to learn more and more through that. So there are a number of approaches that you can take in terms of the gamified content. Just to give you an example of basically what it would be like if you were to actually convert. This is actually real data. I'm not sharing the name of the client though, but this is actually a project that we're currently working on. And what we're actually doing is we are converting the physical training programs, the physical training center, into a virtual reality training center. So look at, just for an example, look at the induction program, the second one in the row. Yeah, though it's a huge factory, it's a huge manufacturing plant. So they have a number of machineries. A machinery itself looks like a factory. So they basically, if you have to take a new joiner through an induction program, it takes about 7 days for the whole process to take place, visiting one equipment to another, and from that to another. And what happens in the process is a number of people's days are actually used. Maybe around 10 to 15 people's days are used in terms of resources. But the same experiences we created in virtual reality, what we are going to talk about is 15 to 20 minutes going through the whole experience, and in a much better impact, because you're not affected by the mood of the people who are sharing the information. It is all standardized. It is created in an interesting methodology and a storyline. And similarly, like any other platforms that you look at, whether it is the administrative journey or anything like that. So totally, if you look at the whole project, which takes them about 21 days, it can be, the whole journey can be completed in about 2 hours of learning. This is the kind of effectiveness and resource utilization that we are talking about in the post-pandemic world. And we need to be ready for it, or else we might be left behind. So we started exploring the digital learning versions of things almost 2 or 3 years back, and I think it has paid us well during these times. Otherwise, we might have been as well really impacted by the business. But if you look at the overall ROI in terms of the scalability, you can share this information, the learnings that you've created with, in this case of the customer, they have 5-6 countries they have branches in. So they can share this with all the entire users, not just with the new joiners. And you can remove all the logistical challenges, save a number of man days, and you don't have repeated costs with multiple trainings happening again and again for new batches. It's a one-time investment. And you can measure and every individual element of your workshops, because you have assessments built in each of the program. Anything that you measure, we believe that you can improve. So it's something that you can deal with that quite well. Just to conclude the talk, I mean, with having said all what I have said, it's very important that we understand basically also the learning culture within the organization. Not all the learners are the same. Not all of them learn for the same purpose. So it's at the end, we also need to understand what kind of learners that we have in our organization, so that we can customize our learning in a way that feels attractive to them. So if you have some people like someone like an Einstein, we call him a theoretical learner. They learn to learn. They are very research driven, and there are people like Mahatma Gandhi who are very altruistic, who wants to serve and develop other people. And there are people who are learning to earn, just like Warren Buffett, an example. So we actually try to do assessments to understand what is the target audience like and what kind of a methodology works best for them. And based on that, we suggest the best solution that meets the requirement of the organization. I have more to say, but due to the interest of time, I would say that I would wrap it up here. So it's like it's not one size that fits all. Sometimes the top management might take a decision that this like, for in case if you just to simplify the example, like in case if you go back to your houses, the top management would be like, a lot of you might say it's our wives. That's the top management of the house. If she says that, okay, this is for your health, this is what you have to eat for the rest of the year. It should be vegetarian food. We know that is the best thing that we have to do. But at the end of the day, we might need to have other types of food also available. Otherwise, it might be a boring process. Just like that, in terms of learning also, it's not just what the organization needs in terms of the strategic objectives that the learners might be given, or should be given. There has to be a personal element as well based on the learning styles. They should be fed so that they have they create an interest for themselves in that as well. And at the end of it, just to wrap up the story, just like how in my case the negative experience of the monkey turned into my favor. Probably I might not have been speaking to you in this talk, in the session, if that did not happen, right? So we can also, if you open our learning nerves, I think we can also create or turn this pandemic situation into a positive one going ahead and looking back probably after 5 or 10 years. So that's it from my side. And sorry to have taken a lot of your time. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Shabir, for interesting presentation from monkey to digitization to learning and everything in there. Interesting to see your presentation. I will request all the presenter now. You have video and audio. We have a few questions now that we will ask the presenters. I want to have one question with Mr. Linden, if I can. That. In this current situation that we all going in, technology has been used very heavily now. People are working from home. People are working in a different environment where they're not used to it. What kind of a tips that you like to give to the people in the current situation? Like 3 different advice that you can give to the people working from home or working a business running from home, or anything that you feel that is very valuable in the current what we all learned in last 3 to 4 months. You have to turn your microphone on, Mr. Linden.
It's on. Can you hear me?
Yes, now okay. Now.
All right.
Yes, yeah. Now.
I think one of the best pieces of advice I heard was from a global leader, and what they said was using video drives effectiveness up by almost 70%, Dr. Tariq. Okay. I think the calls can be impersonal, and if you want to be effective, especially if you have extended teams, I think you need to break up how you communicate with some degree of personalization. Video offers some of that, but the other aspect that I will tell you is that as leaders, maybe there needs to be an offline channel of communication, especially with people, with their employees, as well as, I would say, customers. Okay? But video is probably the most impactful.
Well, I think the way we're gonna do business definitely is a total different way of running our businesses and communicating. Actually, it's gonna be total different way, right?
That is true.
I see. All right. Okay. I have a question for Mr. Aftab regarding the insurance. The question is that are the new health insurance products likely to have the COVID-19 exclusion with the provisions of its buyback and additional premium? I think, can you unmute your microphone, please? Appreciate it. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have to be a good principal. Yeah.
Okay.
With your student, as I say.
See.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Normally, see, the insurance industry has learned after the SARS virus when it came, and that was the time many of the insurance industry had major hit. And now, if we talk about normal inclusion and exclusion, which we all know in our policies, which we buy, and these are all modulars. So normally what happens, an underwriter, when he underwrites a policy and comes with a product, so they take certain modules and there's a cost for every modules which you buy. Okay. If you go on a global sort of, or Lloyd's wordings, the exclusions which you have, pandemic, once it is declared, that doesn't cover. So it means doesn't cover doesn't mean like you are deprived. It means that yes, if you have bought a policy, which no one knows and no one will go and then earlier I'm talking about, they were buying. But after SARS, 2013, I'm referring, and in certain countries, there were people who bought for even pandemic. And then those are the companies, they have to honor their promise and to the policyholders. But normally, when it is pandemic, as per WHO, it's again, I have to be very cautious in my statement, it's the government who takes care of their own people, their citizens and residents. And that always happens. And if we talk about like, you coming from United States, so you know that the outbreak began in China, and then when it reached to United States, it was a major disaster. Whereas the government started throwing each other, and then they claim that even the WHO initially has not acted the way they were supposed to, and then this was the wrong sort of, the announcement which they made it, because the government wanted that insurance companies should pay. If it would have not been announced as a pandemic in US, which today the government has to shell out. That was the main reason, because they knew that they are not going to charge to China for that particular reason, So that is, but yes, now there are products which are being built and are pre-corona, and people on the renewals, they're asking for that. But still, it will take some time. It will take some time still to reach to what sort of covers are required, because it's still 100%. We don't know even there's no cure for that, which has come. Even the vaccine has not come as on date.
I see. No, I think something new, definitely. So I know the insurance industry and any industry, even healthcare or even anybody that is going through a very, very tough time because they don't know how to handle it. But I look at it, the world, whole world is like your whole, let's say, your residential community. Everybody have live in their own houses and everything else. Doesn't matter what happens in one house, you have to protect yourself, and that's why certain countries have taken a lot of precautions and protections. And a country like UAE, we have a much better leadership and much better environment than some other countries who have not taken the precaution at the right time. So
Right.
I think the precautions and everything is the job of every individual. Doesn't matter what way you belong to. So if we play a very responsible role, and I think we can always fighting, and we are fighting, and I think it's almost over. So let's hope that things go back. But I personally feel that insurance industry, see, insurance is a very key word that covers from car, healthcare, business and trading and everything. So insurance means if anything happened unexpected, it should be covered. So my personal opinion is that the healthcare should cover. Doesn't matter WHO or XYZ or insurance company underwriter, but I think we all have to come up with the right solution. So if God forbid anything happens like this again in the future, we all have something on the table to we feel well protected and everything else.
No, that is right. That is
Yeah.
right. For us as a practitioner of insurance, let's put it that way, as a broker or intermediary or advisor or consultant to policyholders, I take it as an opportunity to demonstrate our value at a time when they are really in distress and looking for a piece of professional advice to
Right.
survive in these turbulent times. So
Yeah.
you are right. And
Yeah.
we may face reputational or litigational risk, or credibility from our side if our firm is seen as ignoring these policy holders.
Yeah.
Whether it covers, it doesn't cover, that's differently. But as
Right.
a concern or this, as we say, as an employee concern and the safety of the people and the policyholder, we should give the right advice. And this crisis, in my opinion, is expected to further accelerate, the shift, as I was telling, to digital and direct distribution channel. People, they will invade the world, and social distancing, of course, that is also will remain in place for some time until this pandemic is completely, exterminated.
Right. Yeah. No. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Shabir. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. My
Okay.
camera is not working.
Okay, that's fine. I have a little just question, because I know you talked about a lot about learning and different phases, technology and everything else. What changes do you see that physical learning and virtual learning? Which you think as right now is the right behavior as to understand what they want to know? Which do you think it makes a difference, or is anything either one is much better than the other?
A good question, actually. Don't get me wrong when I present it. I'm not against the physical learning methodologies. I'm a big fan of it, and I personally take time to sit in front of teachers at their feet to learn from them, right? So that's my background. But again, when it comes to let's say cost optimization, especially during these times when people are working from home, when there are situations that we cannot control, and we have a very diverse, workforce. Then what happens is it becomes very much of a challenge to do a physical environment training these days, right? So in that case, of course, you can replicate the actual exact situation in a virtual reality environment if you're open to try that out. And that's a one-time activity that could probably optimize a lot of your costs and a lot of your resources. So in that way, I think a lot of the organizations that we've been working with, we feel that they're going in that direction. But I must confess that in terms of the readiness of the people, or in the place that we are in, training is many a times seen as something that the organization wants us to go and do. It's not something that we personally take interest in do. So in that such situations, in such a culture, sometimes it becomes a challenge to involve and engage them as good as we can do in a physical environment. But both has its place, and both works equally well in its own equations, basically.
I see. No, thank you very much. I think we're coming to the end, but before I end, I'd like to have a quick, short closing remarks from each of the presenters. So I will ask Mr. Linden to give his closing remarks for today. Your audio, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. My advice to the team and the leaders on this call will be: don't overthink this. We provided a simple framework. Pick a few that you believe are the most effective. Build a bulletproof execution plan around this. This situation is not going to last forever. I think the biggest mistake you can make is to cut down on some of the investments that you need, especially around, designing your customer experience. I think that's where we see, I would say, the challenge. So don't let go. Please, build as if this will go on, but at the same time, build a business model that is resilient, that can help you, when recovery happens, that you're ready to capture that recovery, is what I would say.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. Can I ask Mr. Aftab for his closing remarks, please?
Yeah, I should say that this is the era whereas we should look off long-term planning, and we should assess the damage as corporate or individual. This is something which was not heard, not seen, and it has happened. And if we talk about insurance always is something to mitigate the risk which is going to happen. Normally you buy, whether in motor, medical, or whatever you talk about, your property, your credit life, you do whatever it is. So please always think of that. As a practitioner of insurance, I'll say that when you're going to buy an insurance, take advice, whoever it is, your professional, whom you trust, who knows the product, which fits better for you. It shouldn't be that you go and buy something off the shelf because you like it, because your friend has told you that this is something is available. It doesn't fit you. Every business is different, like the same way individuals are different. And that's my last advice, that be careful, cautious, don't just get into a trap that tomorrow you say, oh, I bought a wrong product, which is not covering us.
So you mean make sure read all the fine lines, in
That's
there.
right. That's right. So you should not find yourself in trouble.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. Now can I request Mr. Shabir for his closing remarks?
Thank you, Dr. Tariq. Simply put, what I would say is, be flexible. We as human beings have always been flexible. we cannot say that probably the situations would be much better after the pandemic. Maybe there's another thing in store. Something else might come in, God forbid. But it's not in our control. It's an external thing. But what we can do, as we've always been like a learning species. We've always learned to adapt ourselves to the requirements of the time and change that accordingly. So don't be stubborn and say that, okay, I've invested my millions in this specific thing and I want to get returns out of that thing itself. It might never work that way. You might need to keep your mind open and be flexible, look at wherever the opportunity is and keep learning about new opportunities. And I think it is regardless of the situation externally, it's all a matter of how you deal with your own, or we deal with our own wisdom internally, that makes us different and that makes us stand out from the rest of the crowd. And we need to actually do that, with our foresight, so that other people can follow us, and and we need to actually lead from the forefront in that situations.
Okay, no, thank you. I think where we had a very interesting presenters today from different industries, and I think everybody have given a very valuable input, insight for the industry. So I like to thank everyone. I would like to thank Mr. Linden and Mr. Aftab, Mr. Shabir for presenting and sharing your thoughts and everything. And most of all, I'd like to thank all the participants for their valuable time and everything. And I think, what, like I always say in part, that we should learn from past to correct our present for better future. So I think, we have to see what has happened. We have to see the current, evaluate the current situation for our business, and implement and incorporate the right solutions for better future for all of us. So that's my advice to everybody else. So I will say at the end, please stay healthy and be safe and have a nice day. So thank you very much for your time, and I will end the webinar now. Thank you again.
Thank you.